It was an amazing experience that I would gladly jump on a plane tomorrow and go back and live most of it all over again. It was amazing. It was incredibly eye-opening, just completely overwhelming from a plant standpoint. Just the sheer diversity and variety, and even seeing plants that I was familiar with, but instead of, like I said before, I went, in a small 10-inch pot, all of a sudden they're 18, 20, 50 feet tall plants that are out there. So, it was just, it's like I'm familiar with it, just not in that size. And it was completely, totally amazing. Real eye-opener. Yeah, we came back Sunday night. I was back at work Monday morning. I had classes starting right away on Tuesday morning. So I had a couple of lab classes that we started. I had a couple lectures. I had already previewed or planned on doing a lecture on sustainable landscape practices. So my lecture had been prepared before I left. Have to admit that I didn't totally throw out my lecture, but I modified my lecture quite a bit. Stuck with the skeleton of what I had in the lecture, but then was able to take the experience and take what we had seen and take what we had heard and learned and discussed while we were away, and put that right away into focus with what I was teaching, and more information about carbon footprints and becoming carbon neutral, and that, which here in North America we're not really concerned about. It's not really a big issue, whereas it is a much more of a big issue there. So similar practices, what we need to do here to what they're doing there, they're just more advanced. But I figured it just turned out to be the perfect opportunity to right away, while it was fresh, add that into the lecture and share it with my students. A lot of it we were talking about fertilizing and that type of use of fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, and how there were so many more natural alternatives that we could use. So by switching to the natural alternatives, not only was it better for what we were doing, we weren't replacing our soil with something that was only going to be there short term and eventually deteriorate it, but I also managed to tie in the fact that, well, think a little further than that. Think about the manufacturing process and what, the carbon footprint that leaves behind, and how much more impact. We don't even have the material yet. They're just producing that material and manufacturing that product for us to use, and already it's having an impact on the environment. And then we're going to additionally impact the environment by using that on our own gardens and our own farms and that type of stuff. So that was sort of one of the ways that I tied it in right away. And there were a few head spinning by the end of my lecture, above the fact that I was loud and very enthusiastic and very much into it and very much still excited and in the moment from being still in Costa Rica. And I did explain, sort of the first thing I explained to my students was the concept of Tico time, and explained that while I may still be running on Tico time, I expected them to be on time. So there had to be a little give and take for a couple of days. They told me I couldn't live with that excuse forever. And one of the first things you notice about the landscape, besides everybody having this very small, closed-in courtyard, not really private, but all closed in and well kept, incredibly well manicured, well maintained, clean, but all of them were practical gardens, as well as having some ornamental plants. All of them had some sort of fruit or vegetable or combination of them, that it was usable, that it was there, it was outside the door, you picked it, you ate it, you prepared it, you did what you needed to. And they had the blend of the ornamentals and the edibles, and that had a symbiotic relationship, because the ornamentals actually protected the vegetables from insects, from predators, from whatever the case may be. What we would normally see as decorative plants here, and would think, as a house plant or as a pot, you're actually seeing hedges and hedgerows, and people's houses are lined with that. And another, again, the concept of the living fence all over the place. Pastures, organic pastures and that type of stuff had living fences. I noticed the botanical gardens had living fences on the outside, starting with these very narrow trees that they literally plant a couple of feet away from each other with a little strip of barbed wire to keep animals in to start, to as they grow and mature and add more planting, that the need for the barbed wire is gone, and you create this full living wall that is virtually impenetrable. Most stuff can't get through. The first time I've seen something like that, I've seen plant buffers, but never an actual living fence, which was quite neat. Been visiting this organic garden for one of the hotels, which they use to produce all their own food to be used in the restaurant. It was similar to what we do here as far as organic gardening, but on a more productive scale than what we had. And obviously, you don't see pineapples growing in people's garden, in organic gardens here. It was really neat to see pineapples there, other fruit, and regular domestic vegetables, tomatoes and lettuce and that type of stuff, all growing. But you can see how the climate there is not as conducive for growing stuff like that here, whereas obviously we can't grow the tropical fruits, which they have no issues with. But regular, what we would consider regular domestic vegetables, they've really got to struggle to actually get that to grow. So it was a great opportunity. The weather, the temperatures, the climates, the soil conditions. I mean, a lot of it is the weather, just the sheer, 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours of darkness, and a much longer growing season. So there's no real down period. Here we produce very short time crops, short span crops. There they can extend it, or they just have to keep replenishing over and over and over again, because of the speed of growth in the tropics is just so much faster than what we have here. What normally takes 6 or 8 weeks to come to maturity here can probably be done in half the time in the tropics. It was absolutely amazing to see all the stone walkways, this natural stone walls. I took quite extensive photos of it to bring back and share with my students, but the use of natural products and to be able to use what you had there. Unlike here, because they don't have to deal with frost, whatever else, the use of concrete is extensive. You don't have to deal with frost, that's not so bad, but there were some practices there, waffle bricks and that type of stuff, which we used to some extent here, which I was familiar with, but just seeing how they were used was really interesting to see how it was used and can be done here. Reflecting back on it, I said already one of my, it's fresh, and one of my lectures have already changed this week. Within 72 hours of getting back, I was already changing the way I was doing things. So immediately it's having an effect, and I'm sure that will continue. And as I have a chance to sort of absorb everything that was done, it was go for 12, 13 days. I can't even remember everything I did yet, and it's going to take a while for all the process. And I'm sure as I process it all, more and more of the stuff and the experiences that I had, discussions with other people. I've already made a few phone calls, and we're already working together with other departments, with connections that were made there, so that we can, work together here at the college, get our programs working together and helping each other out. So that's going to be there. So is it going to have an effect on the way I do things? Absolutely, and it will be a positive effect. We were given an opportunity for a couple other things, and one of the things that was mentioned was canyoning, which when explained was actually rappelling down a waterfall. Not something I'd ever thought I'd do in my life, but when the opportunity was there, I said, absolutely, I've got to give it a try. So off 10 of us went the next morning, climbed up to the top of this waterfall that we didn't think looked all that tall from the bottom. Was much higher when we got up to the top, but when it came down to it, somebody needed to go first. I gladly volunteered, I gladly jumped at it, partly for personal pride, and partly looking out for my fellow travelers, figuring I'm the biggest guy there. If the ropes will hold me, it's safe for anybody else who follows. So let's do this and let's get it over. I've had a little bit of experience working in harness before, previous construction jobs and tree pruning and that type of stuff, so it wasn't completely unfamiliar. But the slippery surfaces and the water cascading down was something new. 3-step waterfall, I got down into about the second stage, halfway down, and I'm not quite sure what happened, but everything just sort of disappeared, and I was just part of that waterfall for however long. It seemed a lot longer, I'm sure, than it was, but that probably had to be my sort of Zen moment, where just everything in the world disappeared for a moment, and I was just part of that waterfall. Had the hike not been so hard to get back up to the top of the waterfall, I would have gladly done it over and over a few times. So that was, not only the first time I ever done something like that I never thought I would do, but just having that sort of oneness with the nature, with the water, with the rock, with everything around, just taking in the whole experience of the trip. Had to be, you know, on short term, I mean, it's only been a few days that we've been back, so I haven't even registered everything that we've done. But at the moment, that probably stands out as one of the highlights and one of the key moments that I had when I was there. And it was very personal. I mean, basically everything else disappeared. There were plenty of other bonding moments and that type of stuff that went along, but that had to be the key moment for me while I was away. Yeah, Buena Vida for sure.